Welcome. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. We're delighted to welcome you to the third annual free virtual Caribbean Conference on Corruption, Compliance, and Cybercrime, or as we call it simply 3Cs 2022. We're absolutely humbled and honored by your attendance, which underlines your interest in these critical issues. The drive for good governance and how to counter the powerful triad of corruption, money laundering, and cybercrime that rests behind 3Cs was created in the conference format just for you. The theme is good governance for the sustainable development of the Caribbean, and the theme is relevant because we live in exciting times, doing unprecedented things and in unimaginable ways. And this conference will challenge each of you to think about that broad and open theme in a way that will enable us to learn collectively. Every day, we are learning about the importance of good governance as a key ingredient in the fabric of our everyday lives. Yet we don't always think about linking good governance to resilience and sustainability. But there is no sustainable development without good governance. Bad governance makes it unbelievably more difficult for us to tackle poverty and all its drivers and the disproportionate consequences on the poor and powerless. When poor governance causes immeasurable damage and disruption to our lives and the finger pointing begins, we often fall back on the regret of not having done enough to educate ourselves, to fill the knowledge gaps with cutting-edge information and insights that could have prevented us or saved us from financial loss and reputational damage in the first place. That's the first thing. Secondly, it's not always easy to understand how cybercrime, corruption, and money laundering are interconnected evils. They undermine the SDGs. Corruption, money laundering, and cybercrime undermine the SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals, by weakening national and regional institutions. They also hinder the fight against poverty by diverting scarce financial resources that are intended for poverty reduction, diverting those resources away from projects that deliver economic growth and into the hands of criminals. And we must do something about that. That must stop. And this conference will help to educate all of us about how to close those information gaps. The whole purpose of 3Cs is about thought leadership and the delivery of public goods to you, the virtual audience, who hail from 46 countries. 3Cs enables us to think out loud and in multidimensional and holistic ways about some of those governance challenges plaguing the region and solutions to them. Today and tomorrow, you will experience a unique conference that delivers cutting-edge insights and takeaways like no other. You will be equipped with that kind of knowledge about how to tackle that triad of evils. You will learn how they impact us globally, regionally, nationally, and institutionally, and even individually. Most importantly, you will learn about solutions to them. Make no mistake, problems will be laid bare and discussed here without fear. But also make no mistake, this conference is focused firmly on solutions. We'll start with a keynote by Professor Nikos Pasas, and that is a must hear or see event. That'll be followed by a roundtable of experts on corruption and its impact on the development of the Caribbean. And that roundtable will examine the whole spectrum of prevention, detection, investigation, and sanction of corruption. That'll be followed by another special roundtable for the first time ever of directors of financial intelligence units from across the Caribbean. And they will provide a solutions-focused session that will demystify financial intelligence units and the work and role of those FIUs. And they will look at how compliance in the region is important for our economic development. And they will look at the past and the future of compliance and how their work shapes the economic development of the region, or helps to shape it. That will be followed by a very special roundtable on strategic solutions to de-risking of correspondent banking relationships in the Caribbean. We've been wrestling with this issue for too long, and now is the right time to be focused solely on solutions. Practical and workable and feasible solutions. How far we've come and whether a new normal exists. We'll also get some insights during that session from the United States about how the US Treasury is working on closing that gap for us. That'll be followed by a presentation on managing financial sanctions and the implications for economic development of the region. And that's a special presentation that will look at Russian sanctions, Venezuelan sanctions, etc. That'll be followed by a special presentation as well by the director of Microsoft on how regional governments and the private sector can leverage technology, artificial intelligence and other predictive technology, modeling technology, to curb corruption. On day two, we'll start day two with a special keynote from the FBI's, the Federal Bureau of Investigation's Chief of the Cybercriminal Section, who will provide a keynote on how the FBI works to counter cybercrime and what lessons they may be for the Caribbean. He will look at how we're countering increasingly sophisticated criminal or cybercriminal networks and what businesses and individuals in the region can learn. That'll be followed by a special expert panel on cybercrime who will look at how to ensure stability, security, and build resilience in economic development by countering cybercrime. They will look at case experiences as well as their own experience in being able to deliver that expert roundtable. We'll touch again on the big issue of corruption and maladaptation of climate finance in the next panel, which will feature some very interesting speeches and deliveries from experts on this area. They will cover how scarce funds dedicated to climate financing can be disrupted and diverted by corruption and weak governance, and how we must counter that because we in the Caribbean are most vulnerable to that risk of diversion of scarce climate financing. We'll follow that session with a great new session on corruption and its impact on youth education and culture. We'll look at how youth are able to drive and influence public accountability through social and other media. How corrupt leaders can influence young people into and away from corruption and other corrosive behaviors, but also how we can harness the intelligence and power of youth to combat corruption and effect change. That'll be a very important session for our young people. We will follow that as well with a very important and super special session on corruption in sport and with lessons for the Caribbean. And with all that's happening with the World Cup, we must look at how corruption can erode civic values and foster dishonest behavior in sports, particularly among young people, and undermine the development of their academic potential and sporting opportunities. And that's a really must-watch session as well. We look at also lessons in the next panel from the FBI's investigation of international corruption. And for that, we'll be joined by the FBI's chief of its International Anti-Corruption Unit. We'll follow that session with a session that looks at how corruption, money laundering, and cybercrime are connected, how they interplay with each other. We look at emerging trends and what steps can be taken to be able to counter them. We'll follow that with the final session of the conference, which will be focused on the FTX scandal and its implications for the Caribbean. This is a running headline all over the world with connections right here to us in the region. We'll have a panel of experts have an interactive discussion on the scale, scope, and spread of that collapse of FTX and what it means for our law regulation, crypto impacts, conflicts of interest, as well as all the other FTX-related issues that may interest Caribbean stakeholders. In terms of looking back on 3Cs, 3Cs is now in its third year, and this may be our final virtual year. Each year, 3Cs has evolved to identify and respond to the risks and needs of a vibrant and dynamic Caribbean. Each year, we are writing a new inscription on the entablatures of history, brilliant history. 4 years ago, when 3Cs was conceptualized, I envisioned a small, eager audience of probably no more than 100 die-hard attendees, exchanging views and volleys in a highly interactive and flowing environment. Last year, over 1,000 of you from 46 countries were able to share that experience with us and deliver positive reviews. That's an amazing statistic, but it's also a remarkable burden on us to ensure that we keep the quality and content of our presentations and speakers up to par. This year, we've managed to do that. This year, even more of you have joined us, and we are very grateful and honored by your presence. I am equally honored to dedicate the whole of 3Cs 2022 to the memory of Mr. Carl Howell, who passed away on December 3rd, 2020, the first year of 3Cs. He was a deputy director of our corporate strategy division. He was an economist, a brilliant mind, and a brother to all of us. He had many conversations with me before 3Cs and while I was conceptualizing 3Cs. He was a big believer in the delivery of thought leadership and regional public goods. Here's to you, Carl, and may you rest in eternal peace. It is now my absolute pleasure to introduce you to our main keynote speaker, Professor Nikos Passos. I first met Professor Passos at a course at the International Anti-Corruption Academy in Luxembourg, Austria. I was stunned and inspired by both his fierce intellect and his down-to-earth nature. His energy was fascinating and remains that way today. His humor and use of humor and his ability to make points with respectful but, firm insights is a rare ability. Last year, Professor Passos left us with the metaphor of the swimming pool, which has gone global. And this year, he returns to deliver the main keynote. He will focus on the challenge of good governance for the Caribbean through the lens of ensuring that we place a check on lawful but awful practices. His insights on global taste and sense of knowledge of the issues will take us back into the past and forward into the future with great insights. Professor Passes specializes, among other things, in the study of corruption, illicit financial trade, money laundering, sanctions, remittances, terrorist finance, white-collar crime, financial regulation, organized crimes, and international crimes. He has lectured in dozens of universities and published more than 220 articles, books, and chapters, and reports in 14 languages. His work is truly global in reach and impact. He's fluent in 6 languages, plays classical guitar, and recently received the Jean Mayer Global Citizenship Award. We're very grateful and pleased to have you, and we welcome you, Professor Passes, to the virtual podium. And thank you, audience, for coming. Thank you, and welcome to 3Cs2022.